personality is that which permits a prediction of what a person will do in a given situation.
That's Raymond Cattell from 1950.
You know, I have to be honest with you. When I first read that quote in our research packet, I really didn't like it.
You hated it. Why?
I did. It just felt so, I don't know, cold, robotic even. A prediction of what a person will do. It's like we're talking about a car or a piece of software.
Not a human being.
Exactly, not a human being. I think for most of us, when we talk about personality, we're talking about something else. A vibe, a feeling.
A spirit or a soul.
Right. Oh, he's got such a great spirit, or she's just got this fiery soul. It feels, poetic. It feels intangible, almost like magic.
Right, something that you can't really pin down or measure. It just sort of exists in the ether.
Yes. But for the scientists we are talking about today, and these are really the architects of modern personality, psychology personality isn't poetry at all.
No.
It's not magic. It is a machine, a prediction machine. And their whole argument is that if you get enough data, you can actually see the future.
And that's the big shift in thinking we have to make for this deep dive. The people we're discussing, they weren't trying to write novels. They weren't interested in literary descriptions of people.
They were building a map.
They wanted to map the human character with the same kind of precision that chemists were using to map the periodic table of elements. They literally wanted to turn who you are into a set of hard data points.
And the stakes, they couldn't be higher. They truly believed that if you could just get the math right, you could predict. Well, everything.
Everything.
We're talking about divorce rates, your health outcomes, how successful you'll be at your job, criminal tendencies.
Even how you use the internet. Which is just fascinating when you think about it, because the internet didn't even exist when the grandfather of this whole field, Raymond Cattell, was starting his work.
Right, but the map he built was so fundamental, they argue, that it still applies to how we click and scroll and post today.
It does.
So, here's our mission for today's deep dive. We are going to explore this periodic table of human character. We're going to see how psychology moved from, intuition and vibes to hard math.
Specifically, a statistical tool called factor analysis.
To really define who we are, we'll start with the pioneer, Raymond Cattell, who came up with 16 essential factors of personality, a huge, sprawling map.
And then we'll get to his biggest critic, Hans Eysenck, who looked at that and said it was way too complicated. He tried to boil it all down to our biology.
From there, we hit the gold standard, the model that pretty much everyone uses today, the Big Five, Ocean. And you are really going to want to stick around for that part because the data on how those 5 traits predict your life expectancy is, well, it's absolutely wild.
And we can't forget the dark side of the map. We'll look at something called the dark triad and another model, HEXACO. These are the traits that predict manipulation, deceit.
Yeah.
Basically the kind of people you really want to avoid in life.
And finally, we'll hold up a mirror to our digital selves. We're going to look at what your Facebook usage, your online shopping, what it all actually says about your deep-seated psychology. So let's get into it. Let's unpack the math of personality.
Let's do it.
Okay, we have to start with the man who really tried to make all of this scientific, Raymond Cattell. And reading through his biography in the notes, this guy was intense.
Oh, yeah.
He was not your stereotypical armchair psychologist, smoking a pipe and nodding thoughtfully.
No, he literally described himself as a humming dynamo.
A humming dynamo. On the surface, that sounds pretty cool, like a high-energy CEO or something. But when you dig into the reality of his life, the digestive problems, the divorce, living in a freezing basement, it starts to sound less like a dynamo and more like a man who was just running from something.
Well, it's probably a bit of both. To really understand Cattell, you have to look at his childhood in England. He was born in 1905. His parents were very exacting, high standards, but they also let the kids run wild outdoors. And then, when he's just 9 years old, World War I hits.
And there's that really specific haunting detail about the hospital next door.
Right. There was a mansion nearby that was converted into a hospital for wounded soldiers. So you have to picture this. Here's a 9-year-old boy, Raymond, standing by the train tracks watching entire trainloads of wounded men coming back from the trenches in France.
He's seeing the blood, the bandages.
The shell shock, the absolute horror of it. He wrote later that this experience made him unusually serious for a boy his age. It gave him this profound sense of the brevity of life.
The quote was, "The need to accomplish while one might."
Exactly. That phrase basically became his entire operating system. Life is short. There's so much suffering, and you have to do something that matters before you die.
So he goes off to London for university, and at first he studies the hard sciences, physics, chemistry.
because he wanted concrete answers. But he's looking around London in the 1920s, and all he sees is social chaos, economic upheaval. He realized that physics couldn't fix the world's problems.
The problem wasn't the universe, it was the people in it.
Right. So, against the advice of literally all his friends, he switches his major to psychology.
And we have to stop and emphasize how big a deal that was. In 1924, psychology was, well, is barely a science. It was seen as a field for eccentrics.
There were almost no jobs.
It would be like dropping out of medical school today to become, I don't know, a professional UFO chaser. It was a crazy move.
And he absolutely paid the price for it. The sources talk about a time of hardship. He's living in this cold, damp basement apartment in London. He's suffering from functional digestive disorders because he's working himself to the bone and eating terribly.
And his wife leaves him.
His wife leaves him. She couldn't handle his obsession with his work and the fact that he was making no money. He effectively chose his data over his marriage.
It's tragic, but he actually spun it as a positive thing. He said that living like, quote, a squirrel in a long winter made him ruthless about relevance.
He didn't have time for fluff. He couldn't afford to waste time on theories that didn't have practical application.
And that ruthlessness is what really changed the field, because unlike Freud, who was, treating people who were unwell, Outliers Cattell had no interest in that.
He didn't want to treat anyone.
He wanted to measure normal people. He wanted to find the fundamental structure of the average human mind.
He wanted the periodic table. He thought, look, if the entire physical world is made of these basic atoms, then the mental world must have basic building blocks too.
Okay, but here's the obvious problem. You can't put a personality in a centrifuge. You can't put sadness or ambition under a microscope. So how on earth do you find the atoms of personality?
You use math. Specifically, a very powerful statistical tool called factor analysis.
Okay, let's stop right there. I'm looking at this section in the notes on factor analysis, and my eyes are starting to glaze over. It sounds like a terrifying statistics class. Can you break this down for us? Is it just averaging a bunch of things?
It's a bit more complex than averaging. The best way to think of it is like a giant sieve or a filter. Imagine you have a huge bucket filled with thousands of words that can describe a person.
Okay.
Words like happy, cheerful, joyful, content, but also anxious, worried, tense, miserable. Just thousands of them.
Right, I've got my bucket of words.
Now, you give these words to thousands of people, and you ask them to rate how well each word describes them. What factor analysis does is it looks for patterns. It looks for which words always move together.
What do you mean, move together?
Well, you'll find that people who rate themselves high on cheerful almost always rate themselves high on joyful and happy. Those three words are always correlated. They clump together.
Ah, so they aren't actually three separate independent things.
Exactly. They are three different surface reflections of one single underlying thing, one source trait. Factor analysis is the mathematical process of shaking that big sieve until all the related words and behaviors clump together. It reveals the hidden structure underneath the surface.
So that's how you find out that, say, being tidy and being punctual aren't just random quirks.
Right. They're both symptoms of the same underlying factor, which we would now call conscientiousness.
So Cattell builds this machine, this factor analysis engine. He feeds it just a mountain of data, and he spends decades doing this. And eventually, the machine spits out a number, 16.
The 16 PF, the 16 personality factors, his periodic table.
Now, we're definitely not going to list all 16 because that would turn this into an accounting seminar, but I do want to make this concrete for people. The research packet has this great example of a hypothetical airline pilot.
A classic application of the 16 PF test.
Let's look at that profile because I think it shows exactly how Cattell saw the world.
Okay, so if you look at the 16 PF profile for a successful airline pilot, you see these very specific spikes on the graph. They score very high on a factor called emotional stability.
Makes sense.
They score very high on conscientiousness, very high on tough-mindedness.
Right. You don't want a pilot who is tender-minded and, weeping over a beautiful cloud formation while trying to land a 747 in a crosswind.
Precisely. You want someone who is practical, grounded, and emotionally, well, flat in a crisis. And then you look at their low scores. They score low on tension, low on apprehension.
They don't work.
They don't. And Cattell's test could output this graph, and a psychologist could look at it and say, okay, this person has the fundamental personality structure to handle the stress of being a pilot, or nope, this person is going to crack under pressure.
But here's my skeptical question. If I really want to be a pilot and you hand me a questionnaire that asks, Do you often feel tense or worried?
Ah, I know the right
You're
answer.
gonna lie. I'm gonna lie. I'm gonna say, no, I am as cool as a cucumber. How did Cattell account for the fact that we are all, to some extent, liars when we want something?
He was keenly aware of this. He called it faking good, and he knew it was a huge problem with questionnaires. So he didn't just rely on what he called Q data or questionnaire data. He built a three-pronged approach. He also used L data,
L data.
life record data, things from your life that you can't really fake.
Like what?
Your school grades, how many times you've been in a car accident, whether you're divorced, your credit score, objective facts about your life.
Okay, that's harder to lie about. But he went even further, right? He had T data.
T data, or objective test data. And these were, frankly, ingenious.
Give me an example of a T data test.
These were clever tests where the subject didn't actually know what was being measured. So, for example, he might give you a puzzle to solve or show you an ink blot, and you think he's measuring your intelligence or creativity.
But he's not.
He's not. He might actually be measuring something like how much your heart rate increases under frustration, or how much you fidget, or how hard you press down with the pencil when you get stuck.
Oh, that is sneaky. So while I'm trying to figure out the maze, he's actually watching my hand to see if I have aggressive tendencies.
Exactly. It completely bypasses your conscious mind and your desire to fake good. You can't lie about the question if you don't even know what the question is.
So Cattell builds this massive, intricate 16-factor map. He feels like he's done it. He's mapped the human soul. It's this magnificent achievement, but it's also sprawling. I mean, 16 factors is a lot to get your head around.
It is. It's a huge cognitive load.
And almost immediately, a critic comes along and basically tries to bulldoze the whole thing. A guy named Hans Eysenck.
Eysenck, the great simplifier. He looked at Cattell's 16 factors and essentially said, this is a statistical illusion.
Yeah.
The math is redundant. We don't need 16 buckets to sort all of humanity.
He said we only need 3.
We only need 3.
3. I mean, that feels almost insulting. I feel like I'm more complex than just 3 buckets.
Eysenck was ruthless, just like Cattell. He proposed what he called the PEN model. PEN, Psychoticism, Extraversion, and Neuroticism. He believed these 3 superfactors were the true biological bedrock of personality.
And this is the part I find fascinating. Eysenck didn't just rename things. He did something revolutionary.
Yeah?
He tried to connect personality directly to our biological hardware.
Yes.
Especially with that extroversion versus introversion split.
This is honestly one of the most important and misunderstood concepts in all of personality psychology.
Right.
And it completely flips what most people think they know.
Right. So if you ask anyone on the street, why do extroverts go to parties? They'll say,
Oh, because they're full of energy. They're just wild.
And why do introverts stay home with a book? Oh, because they're shy or they have low energy.
That is the common sense assumption. But Eysenck's research showed that biologically, it is the complete opposite.
Walk me through that. It seems so counterintuitive.
Okay, it all comes down to a concept called cortical arousal. You can think of it as the baseline volume level of your brain's natural electrical activity. It's how on your brain is by default. Eysenck's big discovery was that extroverts actually have low base levels of cortical arousal.
Whoa.
Yes, low. Think of the extrovert's brain like a radio that's naturally stuck on volume 2. It's too quiet in there, it's understimulated, they feel a kind of baseline boredom or even numbness.
So they aren't going to the party because they are already excited. They're going to the party to get excited.
Exactly. They are stimulation seeking. They crave the loud music, the crowd, the fast cars, the risky behavior, not because they're overflowing with internal energy, but because they need all that external input to turn their internal radio up from a 2 to a comfortable 5 or 6. They're literally trying to wake up their sleeping brain.
Wow, that completely changes everything. So then the introvert is what? Their radio is stuck on 10.
Precisely. The introvert has a high baseline of cortical arousal. Their internal world is already buzzing. It's loud in their head. They are naturally hyper-alert. So when they walk into that same loud party, they aren't just not enjoying it. Their system is being assaulted.
It's sensory overload.
It's like turning that radio that's already on 10 up to 15. It blows out the speakers. It's painful. So they retreat to a quiet room with a book, not because they are antisocial or tired, but because they are trying to turn their arousal level down from a 10 to a manageable 5. They are actively regulating their own biology.
I absolutely love that explanation. It explains so much about people I know. I have friends who physically seem to shut down in big crowds, and now I realize they're not being rude. Their nervous system is redlining.
The research even goes into things like pain thresholds. Introverts tend to perceive low-level stimuli, like the sourness of a lemon drop on the tongue, or even a small pinprick, more intensely than extroverts do. They literally feel the world more loudly.
Okay, so that's the E in P area. Extraversion. Let's talk about the N, neuroticism.
This is the dimension of emotional stability versus instability.
And again, Eysenck ties this directly to our hardware, in this case, the autonomic nervous system.
That's right. So we all have a sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight or flight response.
Yeah.
It's the body's alarm system that screams tiger and floods you with adrenaline. Eysenck's theory was that people high in neuroticism basically have a faulty hair trigger alarm system.
It goes off when there's no tiger.
It goes off when the wind blows or when their boss sends a one-word email. They react with a full-blown stress response to things that emotionally stable people would just find mildly annoying. A weird look from a stranger, a traffic jam, their body responds as if it's a life or death situation.
It sounds absolutely exhausting to live like that.
It is. It's a state of constant low-grade panic.
And this is where I want to push back a little on the purely negative label. Is it always a bad thing? I mean, we use the word neurotic as an insult. But if I'm actually in a dangerous situation, don't I want the guy with the hair trigger alarm system on my team?
That's the evolutionary trade-off, right? Go back to our ancestors on the savannah. The neurotic one is the one who heard a twig snap and immediately ran up a tree. The emotionally stable guy probably said, it's probably just the wind, and then got eaten.
Exactly.
And even in the modern world, the data shows this can be a kind of superpower in the right context. If your job requires hypervigilance, really fast reaction times, an obsession with potential threats, think air traffic controller, or a high-frequency stock trader, a chill person might miss a critical signal.
Whereas the neurotic person is already keyed up and scanning for danger.
Exactly. In a chaotic, fast-paced environment, that anxiety can be channeled directly into high performance.
So if you're a listener who scores high on neuroticism, maybe the lesson isn't to be less neurotic, but to find a job where your panic is an asset.
Reframe the anxiety as vigilance.
Okay, last one. Let's hit the PM and PEN. Psychoticism. This one.
Yeah.
Well, this one sounds like a horror movie villain.
It is not a flattering label, and Eysenck definitely took some heat for it. He used this term to describe a cluster of traits: aggressive, cold, egocentric, impersonal, and impulsive. People who are low on empathy and impulse control.
The source material links this pretty directly to criminal behavior.
It does. A high psychoticism score is one of the strongest personality predictors of ending up in prison or having issues with drug abuse. These are people who just don't care about social norms or the feelings of others.
But, and here is that classic Eysenck paradox again, it is also linked to something our society values incredibly highly.
Creativity.
The mad genius trope, is that a real thing?
The data suggests there's definitely something to it. I mean, think about what it takes to be truly creative, to be an innovator, to have a truly original idea. You often have to completely disregard social norms. You have to not care if people think your idea is insane.
You have to be willing to break the rules.
You have to be a bit aggressive in pushing your vision forward, even when everyone else is telling you you're wrong. So that same engine, that nonconformity and disregard for rules, that might lead one person to become a criminal who breaks the law, could, in a different context, lead another person to become an artist who breaks the mold.
It's the same hardware, just steered in a different direction.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've got Cattell with his 16 factors, which is incredibly thorough, but a total headache to remember. We have Eysenck with his 3 biological factors, which is elegant, but maybe a little too simple. And that brings us to the modern era, the compromise, the gold standard.
The big 5.
McCrae and Costa, they came along and basically said, look, 16 is too many, 3 is too few, the real number is 5.
The Goldilocks number.
Yeah.
And this model, the 5-factor model, has really truly withstood the test of time. If you pick up almost any modern psychology paper on personality, this is the framework they're going to be using. We use the acronym OCEAN to remember it.
OCEAN. Let's run through it. But I want to go a little deeper than just the simple definitions. I want to know what these people actually look like in the real world. So O is 4.
Openness to experience. This is the artist, the innovator, the philosopher. People who score high on this just crave novelty. They get bored with routine very, very easily. The data shows they're more likely to change jobs frequently.
Why is that?
Because once they've mastered a job, it's no longer new. The challenge is gone. And routine is absolute kryptonite to someone high in openness. They're also more likely to start their own businesses.
And the notes say they play more video games.
It makes sense, right? It's a way to explore vast new imaginary worlds without leaving your chair.
Okay. C is for.
Conscientiousness. This is the adulting trait. This is your reliable, hard-working, organized person. If openness is the artist, conscientiousness is the accountant who does the artist's taxes.
Got it. C is for.
Extraversion. We've covered the biology of this already at the radio analogy. They're sociable, talkative, but it's also strongly linked to what psychologists call positive affect, which basically means all else being equal, extroverts tend to report being happier. Agreeableness. This is your soft-hearted, trusting, good-natured person. These are the people who value social harmony. They would rather keep the peace than win an argument.
And finally, N.
Neuroticism. The alarm system we talked about with Eysenck. The tendency to be worried, insecure, and nervous.
So, ocean. Now, knowing the acronym is fun for a dinner party, but this is where the research gets really serious, the real-world correlations. And I want to pause here because these aren't just labels. The data strongly suggests that these 5 traits determine, quite literally, whether you live or die.
It sounds incredibly dramatic, but the mortality data is pretty stark. Let's start with conscientiousness.
The boring trait.
The boring trait is an absolute lifesaver. Study after study shows that people who score high in conscientiousness live significantly longer than people who score low.
Is that genetic? Like, do they just have better hearts or something?
It doesn't seem to be. It seems to be purely behavioral. It's the slow, steady accumulation of thousands of small, boring, responsible choices over a lifetime.
Like what?
Conscientious people are more likely to wear the seat belts. They exercise not because they love it, but because they know they should. They eat their fruits and vegetables. They take their medication exactly as the doctor prescribed. They don't fall asleep with a lit cigarette.
They're the person who actually checks the tire pressure before a long road trip.
Exactly. It's all about long-term planning and impulse control. A person low in conscientiousness might look at a weird mole on their back and think, I'll get that checked out someday. The highly conscientious person makes the dermatologist appointment that same afternoon. And that's what catches the skin cancer early. It's not magic, it's just responsible logistics.
Okay, now let's flip it. Let's look at neuroticism, the killer.
This data point was staggering. There was a longitudinal study of kidney patients, people with chronic renal insufficiency. They measured their personality traits and then they just tracked them for years to see who survived.
And what did they find?
The patients who scored high in neuroticism had a 37.5% higher mortality rate.
We need to just sit with that number for a second. 37.5%. We aren't talking about a small effect here. We are saying that if you took 2 groups of kidney patients and everything else was medically equal, same age, same diet, same severity of the disease, the group that worried more died off significantly faster.
It strongly suggests that the anxiety itself is a comorbidity. The chronic stress, the constant flood of cortisol through your system, the strain on your heart, it seems to physically degrade the body. The mind is literally killing the machine.
That is just terrifying. Okay, let's pivot to something a little lighter. Love and relationships. Everybody wants to know who they should date or marry. What does the Big 5 tell us about that?
Well, there does seem to be a kind of winning combination. If you want to predict marital happiness and stability, the data points to a partner who is high in extraversion, low in neuroticism, and high in agreeableness.
So be fun, be chill, and be nice.
That's essentially the recipe.
Right.
But there was a really funny study mentioned in the notes about newlyweds that I just loved. It was called The Improvement Illusion.
Oh, this was great. Break this one down for us.
Okay, so researchers tracked a group of newlyweds over their first 2 years of marriage. They asked each person to rate their own personality over time. And consistently, the newlyweds would say things like, oh yes, I'm definitely becoming more agreeable. Marriage has made me a much nicer, more forgiving person.
I'm growing. I'm evolving into a better version of myself.
I'm basically a saint now. But then the researchers went and asked their spouses, so is your partner becoming more agreeable over time? And the spouses said, actually, no, he's becoming less agreeable.
Ouch. So in our own minds, we think we're evolving into these perfect angelic partners, but the person living with us is watching us turn into a monster.
Or maybe just watching us revert to our true selves. The honeymoon phase ends, the mask of trying really hard slips off a bit, and the baseline agreeableness score shows itself. Love might be blind, but marriage is apparently a 2020 eye exam.
Before we move off the Big 5, we have to settle a debate that has torn the internet apart for years. Dog people versus cat people. The data actually has an answer on this.
It does, and it pretty much confirms every single stereotype you've ever held.
Okay, lay it on me. Who are the dog people?
Dog people, on average, score higher in extraversion, higher in agreeableness, and higher in conscientiousness.
So dog people are basically golden retrievers. They're friendly, reliable, happy to see you.
That's a pretty good summary.
Mm.
And the cat people. They score higher in neuroticism and higher in openness.
Anxious and weird.
Or, you could say, sensitive and creative.
Ah, I see what you did there. So the dog person is the dependable good citizen, and the cat person is the brooding artist in the corner of the cafe.
The data does not lie.
Okay, so we have this powerful map, the Big Five. It seems really robust. But is it universal? I mean, if I go to a remote village in the Amazon or a corporate boardroom in Tokyo, does ocean still hold up?
That's the million-dollar question. And for the most part, the answer is yes. The Big Five factor structure has been found in over 50 different cultures. Israel, the Philippines, Russia, India, you name it. It really does seem to be a fundamental part of the human psychic structure.
But there was a major exception noted in the research, the Bolivian tribe.
The Simane people, yes. This is a remote forager horticulturalist group in Bolivia. They're very isolated from modern industrialized society. Researchers went in, they administered the personality tests, and they ran the factor analysis and the model. It broke.
The factors didn't clump together in the same way.
Not at all. They didn't find the same 5 distinct clusters, which is a hugely important finding. It suggests that maybe some of this universal personality structure we found is actually a product of living in a modern, complex, literate, industrialized society.
So you're saying a trait like conscientiousness might only emerge as a distinct, measurable thing when you live in a world that has clocks and deadlines and bosses and calendars.
It's a real possibility. If you live in a small, tight-knit tribe where everyone knows everyone and life is much more fluid, maybe you don't need a separate psychological bucket for conscientiousness. Your environment shapes the very structure of yourself.
That leads perfectly into the next section on values. Because even if the traits exist across cultures, we don't all value them in the same way. If I'm an Australian, what do I want to be?
The data says Australians value extraversion and agreeableness above all else. The ideal is to be a good mate, to be sociable, friendly, easygoing.
But if I'm in Japan,
Conscientiousness is king. Being reliable, organized, hardworking, and fulfilling your obligations, that's valued above everything else.
and in the US or Europe,
We tend to score higher, on average, on extraversion and openness than most Asian or African cultures. We value the outward-facing personality and the new idea. We're a culture of entrepreneurs and salespeople.
okay, a question that I ask myself every single time I look at my old high school yearbook photos and just cringe. Do we change? Is my personality fixed, or am I stuck with this person forever?
The short answer is, it's very stable, but it does evolve in predictable ways. There's a very strong cross-cultural trend that psychologists call the maturation effect.
What happens to us as we get older?
Generally, as we move from our, let's say, chaotic 20s into our 40s, 50s, and 60s, a few things reliably happen. Neuroticism tends to go down.
Thank God.
We chill out. We stop freaking out about every little thing. Extraversion and openness also tend to decline slightly. We become a little less thrill-seeking. We stop needing to go to the club every weekend or reinvent our careers every 3 years.
And the good stuff, what goes up?
Agreeableness and conscientiousness go up. We tend to become nicer, more cooperative, more helpful, and more responsible.
We basically become good citizens.
We become the elders that the tribe needs. It seems to be a kind of biological programming to prepare us for the roles of parenthood and community leadership.
So there is hope for us all yet. Now, speaking of becoming better citizens, some researchers looked at the Big Five and thought, this is great, but it's missing something. It measures how nice you are, how organized you are, but it doesn't really have a great way to measure your basic morals.
Enter the HEXACO model.
HEXACO, it sounds like a brand of gasoline. Fill up with HEXACO.
It does. But it actually stands for the 6 factors. 2 researchers, Ashton and Lee, took the Big Five, and they argued it was missing a crucial 6th factor, the H, honesty, humility.
Okay, but I have to ask, why did they need a whole separate factor for this? Isn't honesty just a part of agreeableness? If I'm an agreeable person, doesn't that mean I'm an honest person?
That's what a lot of people thought for a long time. But the data showed something really interesting and kind of disturbing. You can be very, very agreeable, super nice, polite, friendly, always smiling, but still be deeply dishonest.
The smiling con artist.
Exactly. The classic used car salesman who is incredibly charming, laughs at all your jokes, makes you feel like his best friend, and then lies to you about the car's accident history. That person is high on agreeableness, but very low on honesty.
And the reverse can be true.
Absolutely. You can be low on agreeableness, kind of grumpy, curmudgeonly, even rude, but be scrupulously honest. The H factor specifically measures things like sincerity, fairness, and greed avoidance versus pretentiousness, deceitfulness, and hypocrisy.
And the research shows this new H factor is actually better at predicting things like workplace integrity than the Big Five was on its own.
Much better. If you want to know if a potential employee is going to steal from the cash register or cheat on their expense report, checking their conscientiousness score helps a bit, but checking their honesty-humility score is the real lie detector.
And if you score really, really low on this H factor, well, that leads us into the shadows, the part of this deep dive I've been waiting for, the dark triad.
Yes, this is the stuff of true crime documentaries and corporate takedowns. The dark triad is a cluster of 3 distinct but related, malevolent personality traits.
Let's break them down one by one, because people often use these terms interchangeably, but they are actually different flavors of toxic. Number 1, narcissism.
The narcissist is defined by 2 key things: an inflated sense of self-importance and a constant, desperate need for admiration from others. Their internal monologue is, I am the most special person in this room, and I need all of you to tell me that constantly.
So at their core, the narcissist wants to be loved and admired.
They want to be worshipped.
Okay. Number 2, Machiavellianism. Named, of course, after Niccolo Machiavelli.
This one is different. The pure Machiavellian doesn't necessarily need your applause or your admiration. They need your compliance. They need control. This trait is all about manipulation, cunning, and deceit for personal gain. Their core belief is the ends justify the means. They view other people purely as pawns on their personal chessboard.
So the narcissist wants you to look at them, but the Machiavellian wants to use you.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And that brings us to number 3, psychopathy.
This is the coldest and, frankly, the most dangerous of the 3. Psychopathy is defined by a profound lack of empathy, callousness, no remorse, and a high degree of antisocial and impulsive behavior.
How is that different from the Machiavellian, who also hurts people?
It's about intent and feeling. The Machiavellian might hurt you, but it's usually part of a cold, calculated, long-term plan to get ahead. The psychopath might hurt you just because you were in their way or because it seemed like a fun thing to do at the moment. They simply lack the basic psychological hardware to feel your pain or to feel any guilt about causing it.
The notes mention a quick test called the Dirty Dozen Scale that's used to spot these traits. I'm going to read just a few of the statements from it, and for everyone listening, I want you to ask yourself if this sounds like you, or more likely, if this sounds like someone you know, maybe your boss.
I tend to manipulate others to get my way.
I tend to lack remorse.
I tend to want others to admire me.
If you're nodding your head enthusiastically to all of those, well, you might be scoring pretty high on the dark triad.
And what does that kind of personality look like in the real world, aside from, being a terrible person to work for?
The research connects it to some very specific behaviors. It's strongly linked to cyber trolling, the kind of person who derives genuine pleasure from going online to disrupt conversations and emotionally upset strangers. It's also linked to posting aggressive status updates on Facebook.
And according to the source material, a very specific approach to relationships.
A very specific mating strategy, yes. High scores on the dark triad are a strong predictor of what psychologists call short-term exploitative mating strategies.
So, hookups.
Hookups, booty calls, a string of relationships with no commitment. It's a take what I want sexually and then leave approach to romance.
Which brings us perfectly to the modern playground, where all these personalities, the good, the bad, and the ugly, get to interact. The internet.
You are how you surf.
There's a whole section in the research on personality in the digital age, and I have to say, it made me want to delete all my social media accounts. It's uncomfortably accurate. Let's look at how the different traits behave online. Let's start with our friends, the neurotics.
The internet can be a real trap for people high in neuroticism. The data shows they are more likely than any other group to become addicted to the internet.
Why is that? What are they getting from it?
It's a dual-purpose tool for them. First, it's a safety mechanism. They can use it to interact with the world and shop without the anxiety of face-to-face interaction. But second, it's a validation engine. The data shows that neurotics post more photos on Facebook than any other personality type.
They're seeking the likes. It's a way of asking, am I okay? Do you approve of me?
Exactly. It's an external way to soothe their internal alarm system. Oh, and they're also more likely to sext.
Really? Why sexting?
Again, it's thought to be a way to seek intimacy and validation without the immediate emotional vulnerability and risk of being physically in the room with another person. It feels safer.
Okay, what about the extroverts? What are they doing online?
Extroverts use social media. Well, socially, it's not a surprise. They have more Facebook friends. They're more likely to be addicted to social connection apps like Instagram or TikTok. They aren't hiding from the world. They're using the internet to extend their party into the digital space and to organize the next real-world meetup.
And our responsible, conscientious friends.
They are the pragmatic, careful users. They are far less likely to post about things like substance abuse or sex because they're always thinking my boss or a future employer might see this. They carefully curate their online image, and when they shop online, it's for one reason: convenience. They want to save time.
Whereas the people high in openness,
They shop online for adventure. They aren't looking for the most efficient way to buy toilet paper. They're looking for unique, weird, interesting items. The artisanal cheese from a small farm in Vermont. And, as we said, they play more video games. They want to explore.
it is just wild to think that every click we make, our average scroll time, the number of photos we upload, it's all leaving this invisible personality fingerprint all over the digital world. Advertisers aren't just targeting your age and location anymore. They are targeting your core psychological profile.
Absolutely. If I'm an advertiser and I know from your data that you're high in neuroticism, I'm going to serve you ads for home security systems and insurance. If I know you're high in openness, I'm going to serve you ads for a trip to Iceland or a bizarre new flavor of craft beer.
So we've come full circle. We've covered the history, the biology, the dark side, and the digital side. But we have to end by addressing the absolute elephant in the room, the question that has plagued philosophers and scientists for thousands of years. Nature versus nurture.
It's a big one.
Are we born this way? Or does our environment make us who we are?
This is the ultimate question, isn't it? And the pendulum has swung back and forth on this for decades. Cattell, way back in the day, he estimated it was about 1/3 heredity, 2/3 environment.
So mostly how you were raised.
Eysenck, the biologist, swung that pendulum way over to the other side. He argued for the primary role of heredity. He thought the genetic component was much, much stronger.
And where have we landed today? What does the modern data from behavioral genetics say?
The modern consensus, based on massive studies of twins, suggests that for most major personality traits, it's about 50-50.
50-50.
They happen to know.
Give or take a little, depending on the trait. But yeah, the best evidence comes from studies of identical twins who were separated at birth and raised apart. They have the same genes, but completely different environments, different families, different schools, different towns, and they still end up being remarkably similar in their Big Five scores.
That's a powerful argument for the genetic component. It's like you come into the world with a certain factory setting. But 50% is only half the story. That other 50% is up for grabs. That's your environment, your friends, your culture, the choices you make. It's the environmental mold traits that Cattell talked about all those years ago.
And that leads me to the final, and I think somewhat provocative thought I want to leave our listeners with today.
Let's hear it.
We started this whole deep dive with that cold clinical quote from Cattell. Personality is a prediction of what a person will do. And over the last hour, we've seen the data. We've seen that these traits can predict death, divorce, job success, and even our scrolling habits with unsettling accuracy. But here's the question. If our personality is 50% written into our DNA from birth, and if it's highly stable over our lifetime, and if it predicts our future so well, then how much free will do we actually have in the choices we make every day?
That is the question, isn't it?
Am I really making a choice? Or am I just acting out a pre-written script that was coded by my cortical arousal levels and my factor analysis scores? Am I choosing to feel anxious right now, or is that just my overactive amygdala firing on its own?
It's a heavy thought, but I would argue, and this is just my personal take on it, that understanding your own psychological map actually gives you more freedom, not less.
How do you mean?
Well, if you don't know that you're a person who is naturally high in neuroticism, you just walk through the world thinking the world is a terrifying place. You think the danger you feel is 100% real and external. But if you know your map, if you can say, okay, I am a person with a high baseline for neuroticism, then when you feel that wave of panic, you can take a step back and say, wait a minute, this feeling is real, but the threat might not be. This is just my biology. This is just my oversensitive alarm system glitching again.
You can separate the signal of a real threat from the noise of your own personality.
Exactly. You don't have to be a slave to the machine. You can acknowledge the signal it's sending you, and then you can choose to override it. The map of the terrain might be fixed, but you are still the one driving the car. You get to decide where to steer.
Knowledge is power. I love that. So here is your homework for everyone listening. The next time you find yourself at a party or in a big crowded place, I want you to do a little internal experiment. Don't just look at the other people. Look at yourself. Try to observe your own cortical arousal. Are you feeling energized? Are you hungry for the noise and the stimulation? Or are you feeling that internal radio dial turn up to 11 and you're instinctively looking for the quietest corner or the nearest exit? You might just find out a little more about who you really are. And once you know that, you can decide what you want to do with it. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
It is a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.